Hello and welcome to another episode of Archery Sights ad Nauseum, and today I'm going to look at the Trophy Ridge React 1 digital Bowsight. This sight came out sometime last year, so 2022. A subscriber recommended in the comments of my Dialed Arxos Part 2 video that I check out and evaluate this sight because he believes it to be, and I'm paraphrasing, the be-all and end-all of bow sights. So we're going to find out. On a side note, I want to thank all 564 of my subscribers for choosing to subscribe to my channel. There are a lot of options available and only so much time in the day, so I want to thank you for choosing to spend some of your time with me. With every video I make, I learn a little more about editing, as well as increasing production value and getting all the information I want you to know about a product in a tighter package. I enjoy making these videos, and I hope I'm helping people make informed decisions about the products. Also, if you've noticed, I now have a means to manipulate sights and rests like they are actually mounted on a bow. There isn't enough room in this recording space to hold an actual bow without banging it into something, so I found this bare archery riser on eBay for 30 bucks, and I'm going to use it as a prop. Trophy Ridge has had their React pin technology out for a while now. It started off as a multi-pin setup where you sight in your 20 and then you move out further and sight whichever pin you get dialed in next. Everything from 30 to 60 would expand out and automatically stop where they should be at those yardages. That concept expanded into a single pin setup where the yardage indicators were the things that spread out and were color-coded, and then they fanned out to the appropriate yardages. Now they went digital with this one. The idea is to have an onboard computer that will set your yardage settings based on your input. Up until this point, I've been something of a Luddite when it comes to electronics on my bow. I've been trying to avoid having anything on the bow that takes batteries at all. It's partly because I don't trust batteries and don't want to need them for my bow to function, and it's mostly because I can't remember to change batteries out or remember to plug in rechargeable ones. So it's kind of a me thing and a maintenance thing. I like being able to pull my bow out and not have to worry about something being charged or batteries being dead. That being said, here I am. The Trophy Ridge React 1 Digital is not a range-finding sight like the Burris Oracle or Garmin Zero. You're still going to need a separate rangefinder to get your yardage, and then you set the sight to the number on the LCD screen or the stick-on sight tape on the other side. The nice thing about this sight versus those is this sight will not stop you from trying to shoot out farther than it thinks you are capable, which the Garmin will, and if the battery dies, you still have a pin. It also does not have the potential limitations of a rangefinder in that you don't have to get a range on the target yourself. If your buddies are trustworthy enough to tell you the correct yardage, you can just dial it in and then you're good to go. The Burris and Garmin, in ranging mode anyway, you have to get a bead on the target and let the sight figure things out, and hopefully you're not accidentally ranging it on an obstruction that's in the way. Similarly to the Garmin and Burris, the settings and yardages you get are only as good and accurate as the information being entered into the sight and your ability to judge your own groups and accuracy. So if you suck and can't get a consistent group at distance, then no amount of technology is going to help you. In the package, you get the sight, a micro USB charging cable, a USB plug adapter so you can actually plug it in, a set of 12 sight tapes, the instruction manual, warranty card, and a push-button sight light that screws into a spot next to the scope and runs on its own batteries. I'm guessing it would have been more complicated to set it up to run on the rechargeable battery that powers the unit, but that would have been better in my opinion. I would have liked it if the charging port was a Type-C, because that's what the rest of my electronics that I carry around uses, but it's not a deal breaker. The packaging is nice that it comes in, but it is a bastard to get open, so feel free to choose violence to free your sight from it. I did. The sight's weight is not listed on the website, but according to my postal scale, it weighs 14.3 ounces with the dovetail mount. So maybe knock off a little for the standard mounting bracket, and it's a little on the heavy side for a hunting sight. Compare that to the Dialed Arxos dovetail at 14 ounces even, and the Axel Landslide at 10.8 ounces. So if weight is a consideration, then the Landslide is the clear winner here. I bought this one with with a standard riser mount, not because that's what I wanted, but I managed to win this in an auction on eBay for $100 less than it cost retail. They also have the dovetail mount available, as well as the Matthews bridge lock and Picatinny rail mounts. Maybe they'll also machine one for the Bowtech Core series that just came out. Personally, I believe proprietary mounts are a bad idea, but I'll make a separate video on that because I actually have a lot to say about it. The dovetail bar is made of aluminum and has 5 different positions. The dovetail bracket is also aluminum and has a simple locking knob. It doesn't have detents to index your position, so you kind of have to make sure that it's lined up properly before you lock it down so you don't end up leaving marks on the dovetail bar. A quick search on Google seems to indicate that the React 1 Digital does not have a model that comes with the dovetail mount installed, standard. So if that's what you want, you have to buy it separately. The standard bracket has 3 different mounting positions, so I have the option to move it in or out on the riser. I wanted the dovetail mount so I could take it off of the bow more easily to charge it, though I may still leave it on the bow anyway. I could very easily forget to retrieve a detached sight, but I have yet to forget my entire bow when I have to go somewhere. There is a version of the sight available with the Matthews bridge lock dovetail bar already installed. It is not the same bar as the regular dovetail bar for reasons that I will talk about in that video that I alluded to before. To Trophy Ridge's credit, they have all the mounts available for purchase separately on Bear Archery's website, and they don't price gouge you for it. The dovetail mount upgrade was $30 plus shipping, and they only ship via UPS, so shipping adds another $12 to $14. Apparently Trophy Ridge, Cajun Bow Fishing, and SIK Broadheads are all subsidiaries of Bear Archery, which is good to know. By comparison, the conversion kit to change an Axel Landslide or an AccuTouch to a Picatinny mount rail is $185, and the dovetail mount conversion is around $180. Axel, are you fucking kidding me? God, how do you sleep at night? The React 1 Digital comes with its own single up pin scope with a choice of a 10,000th or 19,000th green fiber. It doesn't appear you have the option to choose a different color. Green is fine with me. It also doesn't allow you to change the orientation of the pin, so you can't, turn it 90 degrees and have a side pin or a down pin. So it's just up. That's it. The windage bar for the scope puts the top of the scope in line with it for some reason. So the scope sits down significantly further than the other setups I'm accustomed to using. Usually the windage bar is lined up with the pin, like in this one. I don't know why Trophy Ridge sets it up that way. It works fine, but it looks off to me. There is a universal scope kit available on Bear Archery's website that allows you to attach scopes from different brands to this adapter bracket, and the cost for it is another $30. It comes with a set of polymer spacers to fit around other companies' windage bars and clamp into this bracket, or scopes that bolt from the inside of the scope with a button head screw can attach directly to a threaded insert that comes with the kit. My React 1 is going to be wearing this Shrewd Optum after I finish this review. There is a digital LCD screen on the arrow shelf side with a space on the other side for a traditional sight tape with an adjustable indicator pin. The LCD screen can be set to glow in your choice of 5 different colors, and it glows in your chosen color at 10-yard intervals and changes color at the odd yardages in between. That's nice if you turn your wheel slowly, but if you turn the elevation wheel too fast, it takes a second for the numbers on the screen to catch up, and you can skip right over the flash to show you hit one of your 10-yard settings. I've overshot my estimated yardage setting waiting for the reading because of the absence of a tape to look at, because that eliminates your point of reference. It's kind of like driving a car with a digital speedometer instead of a gauge. It's hard to gauge the speed of your acceleration without a needle to look at if you're not accustomed to it. You can also set the unit to half-yard intervals if you have a rangefinder that gives you half-yard readings. I do not have one of those, nor am I accurate enough to recognize a half-yard difference in my point of impact. The elevation adjustment wheel has a smaller star wheel to lock the elevation in place. The mechanism is stiff enough to hold its position without locking it down fully, so the locking knob can function as a tensioner or as a lock. It rattles if you leave it loose, but if you spin it out as far as it'll go, it'll lock itself down again. In terms of fit and finish, the sight is assembled with all stainless steel hardware that does not have a head stamp on it. So it's generic. It doesn't have its own, I can't look up the manufacturer of the screws. They do seem to be of sufficient quality in that I've been able to lock them down the ones that I have had to work with, I haven't rounded off yet. The sight is anodized aluminum and looks pretty consistent in its anodization. There were no dings or scratches when I took it out of the box. The tension to turn the elevation wheel is not consistent throughout its travel. It's harder to turn at the top of its travel and easier the further down you go in yardage. There's also a little bit of stacking in there too, so it's not 100% smooth, though it was harder, or it feels smoother when it's attached to a riser than when I was handling it before it was mounted. The wheel has zero slop though when changing directions, which puts some other companies to shame. Hey, what's that doing up on my screen? The electronics unit seems to be sealed with a rubber gasket, and the charging port, which is right here, has a cover to press in place to seal it. My equipment doesn't get to see a whole lot of rain or moisture, but this is intended for hunting, so it should be water resistant to some extent. I don't plan on dunking mine to find out. The included scope is functional, but is fairly utilitarian. The fibers are encased in a clear plastic cover on the front, and they collect enough light for the pin to be visible, but it kind of has a cheap look to it, in my opinion. It has a threaded lens retainer ring on the back, and I think it accepts a 1 3/4 inch lens. I don't use lenses, so please check for yourself if you're considering ordering one. The scope has a medium-sized bubble. It's not huge like a Shrewd Optum, but it's a lot easier to pick up in my peripheral vision than the tiny one on the dialed Arxos. The sight has micro-adjustable windage and elevation bars. They have detents for clicks, but the movement has some slop between the clicks. It's not like an Axle Achieve where it clicks, moves, and stops. Like there's a defined interval between clicks on an Axle. This is a worm drive system where it turns smoothly and clicks while it continues to turn. The sight does not have adjustable elevation stoppers at the top or bottom, so you can't adjust them for top travel and bottom. So to get the most out of your sight, you're going to want to pin the gang elevation at the top of its travel, like so, and use the worm drives to dial in your 20. That way you hit the stopper at the top of the elevation and you're automatically on your 20. The micro adjustment is lockable via a knob on the front with a knurled bar right here. You can unscrew that little bar and change its position because it's got multiple positions around, so if it's over here and you want it over here, you could do that. So you could also remove it entirely so it doesn't loosen and get lost. It does accept a hex wrench at the top to tighten it down, and I actually am not able to break this loose with my fingers, so it's probably not going anywhere unless you loosen it and only hand tighten it when you want to put it back on. The sight is mostly toolless as a result. The second axis and third axis you have to use wrenches, but for any adjustment to sight it in, it's toolless, which is kind of nice. Second and third axis adjustments are available, and they are not micro adjustable. Third axis is right here on the back. Second axis is on the bar that attaches the windage bar. There are hash marks on the mounting points for reference. I just centered them both, and I haven't checked mine yet to see if they need any tweaking. I'll do that at some point if it seems off at really long distances. The scope is bolted to the windage bar right there. So you technically don't have a first axis adjustment unless you use an aftermarket scope. The instructions do not have a section for how to adjust second and third axis, so if you don't know how to do so, there are plenty of online resources to help you through it. Most of the time, you really don't need it. As long as everything's lined up correctly, then it's usually not necessary unless the mounting points on your sight are off. But in my experience, the only sights that ever needed second and third axis adjustment were the ones that had the adjustments available on them. And now for the part that makes this sight unique. There are 2 modes for setting yardage. There is sight-in mode and speed mode. The one you choose is going to be determined by 3 factors: the equipment you have available, how much you trust said equipment, and if you are proficient enough to feed good information into the sight. If you have access to a rangefinder and a chronograph, you trust both to give good readings, and you can loose arrows with a recognizable degree of accuracy, then either method should work for you. If you don't have access to a chronograph, then you will have to use the sight-in method. Instructions for sight-in mode are in the manual, so I'm not going to go into too much detail on it, but it's basically what we've always been doing to pick our sight tapes. To sum it up, you establish your 20-yard pin, then move out further, as short as 30 yards, and then you log that setting. Once you go through that process, which is detailed in the instructions and isn't too complicated, once you figure out what button does what, the site will give you what it thinks is the rest of your yardages based on the spread between your 20 and 30. Once you do that, it'll give you a set of yardages as far out as the available amount of travel will give you, and then you can tweak it further to make sure the numbers match your point of impact. The other available mode is speed mode, and that requires you to establish and log your 20-yard setting, and then enter the speed of your arrows. And that's it, at least for starters. Once you enter your arrow speed, the system will calculate your yardages and give you the rest of your yardage settings until you run out of travel. After that, you move out further and check and see how it did. If your impact point is low, the instructions tell you to enter a lower speed than you originally entered, and if your arrows are high, then you would increase the speed and check again. So there is an incongruity between the settings or the readings on the chronograph and what your sight thinks that you're actually, or how your arrows are actually performing. The distance the sight is from your riser will influence the amount you have to move your sight up or down in order to get an equivalent yardage setting. So that's one reason why the sight, and every other sight for that matter, may require some fine-tuning once we get everything dialed in. The computer in the React 1 Digital does not account for it, so either it doesn't think it matters for the range you can adjust it, I mean in and out wise, or it just simply keeps it simple and gives you a starting point to figure it out for yourself. You'd think there'd be a lot more that goes into figuring out impact point at distance other than just where you start and how fast your arrows go, but it turns out that's not the case. I think both methods, sight-in and speed, should get you the readings you need. My recommendation if you're going to use sight-in mode is to go out as far as you can accurately shoot to verify the numbers. I feel that'll get you the best results, rather than just sticking with 20 and 30. I feel like that's too close. Like that shouldn't work, but for some people it does. I don't trust it. But I feel like getting 20 and then going out, like the further you can go and recognize how you did, the better. Just like if you were picking a regular sight tape, like a stick-on type. So I went with speed mode to get my yardages, and I found the results to be quite surprising. I used my FX radar chronograph that I rigged up to mount directly to my bow and checked the speed of my arrows. I got myself sighted in at 20 and established the setting in the system. I turned the elevation wheel to the top of its travel and used the elevation and windage worm drives to zero in my 20. That way 20 is the easiest to get back to since it's pinned at the top. So no matter where I am, I could just spin it till it stops and I'm back at my 20. It also gives me the maximum available travel for maximum yardage because the elevation bar has all of its travel available to it, and that'll be important depending on what your poundage is and how far you want to be able to reach out. So the FX radar chronograph has an app on the phone, so I linked it to my phone and shot 3 arrows over it. The app on the phone has audio capabilities, and a robotic woman's voice declared
So we're
278 feet per second for all three, which was unusually consistent for my bow, my arrows, and me. I put together my own arrows, and knowing how I put together my arrows, they should not be that consistent, but all the same, that was good enough for me. So after I finished with the chronograph, I followed the instructions and entered in my arrow speed, then I moved out to 40 and 60 yards. The only adjustment I ended up needing to make was a little bit of windage, which is normal when you first reach out with a new sight. The yardages out to 60 yards were dead nuts accurate, and I didn't need to make any additional adjustments beyond setting my 20 and entering in my arrow speed. I suppose this speaks to the accuracy of both the sight and the chronograph that I was using. If your chronograph is giving you accurate readings, then the sight shouldn't need any subsequent tweaking once you enter in your settings. If you need to make changes, then there's a chance your chronograph might be off. Just a thought. Apparently my FX chronograph is right on the money, which is money well spent. So that was the quickest I had ever sighted in a bow out to 60 yards, and I am very impressed with this feature. I expected to have to move things around or change settings or switch between modes in order to make sure that everything was right, and I didn't need to do any of that. Like 20 yards, speed setting, dead on the money. So I was very impressed, even though I don't sound like it. So while I think this is definitely a good option for me, because like I said, I'm very impressed with how it worked out with my current setup. I think there are applications where a piece of equipment like this could save a lot of time and make sighting in someone's bow a lot easier. I'll have to test it, but I think this would be good for someone who is shooting low poundage or very short draw length and may have trouble selecting a sight tape. It may also be good for someone who doesn't have the confidence yet to try to shoot longer distances and verify their settings. The pre-printed sight tapes don't go tall enough to cover low poundages and short draw lengths. Using a sight like this, you would get a similar effect as you would when choosing a sight tape using a program like Archer's Advantage or another some such. So I think there are applications that are better. Like I can shoot long distances, but if you have somebody who's worried that they're going to lose their arrows or they're going to break something, or they just don't have the confidence in order to reach out that far, this might be the way to get them over that. I can see an advantage in this sight over something like an Archer's Advantage in that you can make adjustments on the fly in elevation and you don't need a computer, printer, or labels. It should also get you more accurate numbers than the low-tech method of putting a blank tape on your sight and marking off the yardages as you loose your arrows and then choosing a pre-printed tape that matches the markings you made. That method has served me well so far, but I'm not against letting a small computer work out the details so I can focus on things I'm supposed to be doing, like letting my pin float and focusing on my shot execution. So I don't really have anything overtly negative to say about it. I do have a few concerns and gripes that may pan out with future use, but I'll talk about those now. In terms of durability, I don't know how durable the electronics are on this sight. I would hope it would hold up if it's banged around, but I would think a sight with no electronics would do better in a hard use setting. The LCD screen doesn't look like something that could take a punch, so plan accordingly. The sight and its accessories are absolutely covered in branding, and it is not remotely subtle. Trophy Ridge really wants everyone around you to know you're using a Trophy Ridge product, and as a guy who doesn't wear clothing with logos and engraves his own logo on the back of the holsters he makes to keep it subtle, I would prefer if the dovetail wasn't etched like this and the branding was smaller or, like I said, a little more subdued. The bright yellow of the stickers it really sticks out and is kind of detrimental to my stealth bow aesthetic, as is my preference. The lettering on this dovetail bar is getting a black Sharpie treatment until the next time I need to ask my wife to do some Cerakoting. Check out our website for her artwork as well. She's the art, I'm the archery. That advertising bow aesthetic, or kind of obtrusive I would call it, is not specific to just Trophy Ridge. It might be a factor of where it's being made, because another company I'm going to be reviewing in time is Redline Archery, and they have their branding isn't subtle at all either. So stay tuned for that one. This is the Redline Torch, and I'll be reviewing that soon. So another potential gripe that is and isn't a problem, the batteries in the sight light do need to be replaced, and the unit does need to be recharged sooner or later, and usually soon. I'm terrible about keeping things charged. I saw users of this site report that it can go months on a single charge, so you're going to want to keep an eye on your battery indicator before you use it in a setting where it would be catastrophic for it to go dead on you. I don't think it has an on-off or an auto-off feature either. I didn't see it in the manual, and it didn't shut off on itself while I had it on the range for about 4 hours. So I think if you leave it on, it's going to stay on until the battery dies. So something to keep in mind. Like I said, I'm terrible with batteries and anything that needs to be recharged. I pretty much just use it until, well, my phone I'm good about plugging it in, and my headphones I'm good about plugging in. And and I just do that as a routine. But anything else that I need to plug in, I'm bad about that stuff. I just expect things to work until they don't. The elevation adjustment on this sight can bottom out before you run out of arrow clearance, depending on how many adjustment points you have for your sight mounting block. For my setup, 65-pound bow set on 60 pounds, 28-inch draw length, 400 grain arrows, 278 feet per second. The sight bottomed out at 109 yards, but I had more room. So regarding running out of yardage at the bottom but still having a little bit of arrow clearance, on the setup that I was trying the sight on, I can use a different set of sight mounting holes and move the dovetail mount down one to give me more yardage at the bottom, assuming I have enough room at the top of the dial for the 20. I can also increase my draw weight since I'm shooting 60 and the bow I was using was a 65. Overall, I think I can live with 109 yards, at least until the next total archery challenge I attend. I would like to be able to get out to at least 125 and be able to reach out without having to do any holdovers. That's my goal. If I get it, great. If not, then I'll be sad once a year when I go out to tack. Another small, I guess you could probably chalk it up to familiarity with the sight, but it's a little harder to estimate how far you need to turn your elevation knob when you're looking at a digital readout as compared to a tape that you can see. And the numbers on the LCD screen don't quite keep up with you. It's like you could turn it faster than they move. So you can overshoot your target yardage and have to backtrack. So I took to turning it a little more slowly in order to make sure that I got the right yardage that I wanted and didn't have to backtrack. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, as it were. If you are shooting a lower poundage and or short draw length, then your maximum yardage is going to be lower, obviously. If you want to reach out as far as you can, then using something like a target sight would probably give you better range than this sight, because, like I said, you're going to run out of downward travel before you run out of arrow clearance. Trophy Ridge products are manufactured in China, and they do not try to hide or dance around the issue. How much does the country of manufacture matter to you? As much as I want as many things I use made in America as I can, some things just aren't made here anymore. The electronics in most consumer products are generally made overseas, and then possibly assembled here, if not overseas as well. Other things like screws and bolts are just not made in the US anymore. If it's a unique product that happens to be manufactured overseas to offer it at a more affordable price, I'm not necessarily going to hold it against them. However, I will make sure to mention it in my reviews, and then my viewers can make their own decision based on that knowledge. The MSRP for the React 1 Digital is $379.99 for the standard mount and $399.99 for the bridge lock. I've seen them being sold for as low as $279.99, and if you can find them at that price, then go for it. I don't think there are any sights on the market that do quite what this one does. The IQ Define is a multi-pin sight with a built-in rangefinder. The Garmin Zero and Burris Oracle are range-finding sights. They have similar feature sets in terms of setting up pins, but they cost significantly more due to their range-finding capabilities. There's another sight company called SureSight that is a range-finding sight that requires the selection of a sight tape profile that matches your arrow setup and bow specs. So instead of deciding on a sight tape, you have to scroll through their profiles. So from what I've seen of it, the React 1 Digital is still probably the easiest one to set up of the bunch. There are other versions of the React sight for different applications. None of the other ones are rechargeable. They're all, I guess you'd call it analog, or they don't require batteries. In conclusion, out of the box, the sight works as advertised, provided the information you are entering into it is accurate. I would prefer a version with a standard dovetail mount without needing to pay the extra money. In short, it delivers what it promises, and I really can't find that much negative to say about it. So there we go. We found something that I don't hate. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and happy hunting. So the Trophy Ridge React 1 Digital, that's a mouthful. A quick Google, that is one of those words that I just can't say for some reason.